My name is Lingy, and I woke up to find the world had changed completely. The first thing I registered was the smell, rough timber and damp earth, the unmistakable scent of a place built in a hurry and not meant to last. I was lying on a crude wooden cot inside a small, shabby hut. No dorm room ceiling above me. No campus sounds drifting in from outside. Just the creak of planks settling and a mechanical voice speaking directly into my skull, calm and indifferent as a surgeon describing a procedure. Welcome to the endless continent. It explained, in crisp and unhurried tones, that I was now a lord. I had land. I had people, a handful at least. So did billions of others who had been pulled from Earth without warning or consent. The voice made it sound almost reasonable. The goal, it told me, was simple: grow strong, endure the monster tides that would come to test what I had built, and seek immortality. The last part it mentioned almost as an afterthought, like a contractor noting a future renovation option while you were still standing in the rubble. Most new lords were already losing their minds in the global chat. I could feel the panic leaking through like heat from fire. Frantic messages, desperate bargains, people discovering their starting talents were ordinary at best and useless at worst. I understood their fear. Talent in this world was everything. Mine, however, was something else entirely. The system called it infinite evolution, SSS rank, unique classification, completely unlike anything else in the talent pool. The ability to evolve my territory, my items, and even my people. More than that, every evolution carried a chance to trigger a mutation, branching away from the expected path into something entirely new and often far more powerful. The only cost was evolution points, earned by defeating monsters. I sat up slowly, took stock of my starting territory, a single cabin and a recruitment pool, and made my first decision. I activated the pool and called 2 citizens into existence. They arrived disoriented and blinking. 2 Tier 1 farmers, a woman named Rashu and another named Launchy. Both were weak. Both were confused. Both were mine. The system issued its first warning shortly after, a 7-day protection window before a massive beast tide would arrive to evaluate whatever I had managed to build. 7 days. I did not intend to spend them waiting. I took a wooden spear from the starting supplies, stepped past the boundary of my protective barrier, and walked into the dark forest alone. The goblin didn't see me coming. 1 clean ambush, 1 clean kill. I stood over the body and felt the system register my first evolution point. It wasn't glory. It wasn't even satisfying in a conventional sense. But it was the beginning of something. When I returned to camp, I knew immediately what my first evolution target had to be. My people were the foundation of everything. Without capable followers, territory was just empty land with a flag on it. I put my hand on Rashu's shoulder and pushed the talent forward. The green light that wrapped around her was unlike anything I had expected. Not a gentle shimmer, but a consuming brilliance that seemed to disassemble and reassemble her on levels I couldn't fully perceive. When it faded, the tired farmer was gone. In her place stood a Tier 3 elf. Her beauty was striking, yes, the kind that made you take an involuntary step back, but what mattered more was what the system told me about her potential. She had gone from F rank to B rank in a single evolution. She now carried skills in archery and magic, and she looked at me with the devoted certainty of someone who had just been given a second life and knew exactly who to thank for it. I helped her to her feet and understood, in that moment, the true scope of what I had been given. Launchy watched from a few paces away, her eyes enormous, hope and hunger written plainly across her face. "You're next," I told her. "But first, we need a weapon." Rashu was now a 3rd-tier elf with real combat potential, but she had nothing to shoot with. I spent part of my starting with crafting the simplest bow I could manage. Low quality, barely functional, the kind of thing a child might carve on a rainy afternoon. Still, I knew what it could become. I went back into the woods. Another goblin, another point. I returned, placed my hand on the rough bough, and evolved it. The transformation was immediate and complete. The crude shortbow became a high-quality elven longbow, elegant and deadly, the kind of weapon Rash's new form deserved. I handed it to her, and something shifted in her posture. She straightened, settled into herself, became fully what she now was. We walked out together to test her. The results were beyond anything I had dared to estimate. Rasu moved through the goblin camp like flowing water, each arrow finding its mark before the target could process the threat. Goblins fell silently, mid-motion, mid-breath, before a single cry could carry far enough to warn the others. The whole camp was cleared in under a minute. We spent the next hour working the forest edge, methodically clearing 7 or 8 more camps. Other lords, somewhere out there, were likely struggling to keep one soldier alive against a single monster. We were farming experience like a commercial operation. By the time we returned to the barrier, I had accumulated 82 evolution points. I knew better than to push too hard too soon. We pulled back. Launchy was waiting for us, trembling with poorly contained anticipation. I placed my hand on her shoulder. The system engaged, and just as before, a mutation occurred. Launchy was no longer a farmer. She was a Tier 3 moon priestess, robed in white light. Her potential reading even higher than Rashu's S rank, which made my breath catch. Her skill set was built for support, healing, magic amplification, and enemy control. The perfect complement to an elite archer. 2 powerful followers. A real beginning. With 81 evolution points remaining, I turned my attention to infrastructure. People were my heart, but buildings were my bones. I chose to upgrade the recruitment pool, spending 10 points, and watch the cracked stone basin shudder and expand into a fountain of white jade, what the system now called the Spring of Life. 4 recruits per day instead of 2. Higher baseline quality. A chance, however small, of finding someone exceptional. Since a new day had begun at that moment, I used my new recruitment capability immediately. 4 women stepped out of the light, and they weren't farmers. They were Tier 2 spear soldiers. I had 6 followers now, and the territory was starting to feel like more than a campsite. With 71 points still available, I looked at the strongest of the 4 soldiers, a woman I named Puna, and made a decision. I placed my hand on her shoulder and pushed the talent forward. The crimson light that followed was violent and magnificent. Puna grew taller, stronger, her skin threading over with dark red dragon scales. Horns curved from her temples. The spear in her hand wrapped itself in fire that did not burn her. She became a Tier 4 dragon blood warrior, and everything around her took half a step back. The remaining soldiers I evolved into heavy-armored blackguards. Thick steel, tower shields, unmovable discipline. My team was now complete and balanced in exactly the way I needed. Puna for offensive destruction, the blackguards for an impenetrable front line, Rasu for range precision, and Launchy for healing and support. We looked like a legend that hadn't been written yet. I decided the nearby goblins weren't worth our time anymore. We needed stronger prey to grow faster. We found them quickly, a group of Tier 2 goblin warriors, more aggressive than their lesser cousins, better armed, moving with actual purpose. It didn't matter. Puna carved through them like fire through dry paper. Rasu picked off the stragglers from a distance. The battle lasted seconds. The evolution points kept climbing. Then the ground shook. From the mouth of a cave ahead, a 2-meter goblin chieftain emerged wearing a crown of bone and dragging a club studded with spikes. The first real boss we had encountered. The system tagged it as a Tier 3 elite monster, and I felt the difference immediately, not just in the creature's size, but in the pressure it radiated. I gave the orders crisply. The blackguards went to the front, bracing their shields against the chieftain's crushing strikes. Launchy placed herself behind them, her moonlight flowing constantly to repair the damage as fast as it was dealt. When the chieftain attempted a shockwave to stun us, Launchy reinforced our defenses, and we didn't falter. Then she did something extraordinary. She summoned a silver chain of magic and locked the chieftain in place, frozen, furious, and unable to act. Puna and Rasu hit it simultaneously, targeting every weak point. The boss convulsed. When Launchy froze it one last time, Puna drove her flaming spear through its neck in a single clean sweep. 20 evolution points. a special achievement notification, and a glowing bronze chest. The goblins who had been watching from the edges fled. Lingy took a slow breath to quiet the adrenaline and crouched beside the chest. Rasyu and the others formed a circle around him instinctively, curious eyes fixed on the prize. He pressed his hand to the lid. 2 items drifted upward in a wash of blue-green light when it opened. One was a crumbling piece of parchment. The other was a gray crystal the size of a fist, pulsing with compressed energy. The parchment turned out to be a level 1 barracks blueprint, a structure capable of training up to 10 soldiers per day, even basic soldiers. Even compared to the upgraded spring of life's 4 recruits per day, 10 was a number that made any lord's heart rate climb. The crystal was a low-quality energy core, usable either as a power source for certain buildings or convertible into 100 units each of wood and stone. Given how desperately Lingy needed raw materials, it was almost as valuable as the blueprint. "Master, are you all right?" Lanchi asked softly, reading the smile he was failing to suppress. "Better than fine." He stood, pocketing both items. He looked at his team, exhausted, a little battle-worn, but very much alive and very much devoted. "You all performed exceptionally. Lanchi, your control was what won that fight. And you 3-inch, he turned to the blackguards, your wall held. All of you should know that." The guards straightened under their helmets. Even through the steel, the pride was visible. He waved them toward the cave. "Clean the field. Then let's see what the chieftain was hoarding." The cave was everything you'd expect from a goblin lair. Dark, foul-smelling, carpeted with bones and scrap. Puna and Rasyu flanked Lingy closely as they moved inward, Puna's spear casting a warm red glow along the walls. The chieftain's personal chamber was a wider space at the back. Inside, a worn wooden chest beside a rough straw bed. Lingy kicked it open. Copper coins and dried meat. Disappointing, but not surprising. This was a beginner-tier camp. The real prize was already in his inventory. He gathered his people, tallied the loot, about 100 copper coins, broken gear stripped for materials, and led everyone home. Along the way, he checked his status. His evolution points had climbed to 165 since the battle. A substantial number, more than enough for the next step. Should I evolve the existing units, or wait for the barracks? He watched Puna walk ahead of him, dragon flame spear resting across her shoulder, radiating absolute confidence. The question answered itself. Of course he would evolve. But the most urgent priority wasn't the troops. It was the foundation beneath them. Without upgrading the Lord's Mansion to Tier 2, he couldn't unlock new building types. Everything else had to wait. The upgrade requirements for the Lord's Mansion were steep, 200 units each of wood and stone. Lingy dismantled the energy crystal he had found, gaining 100 of each. He stripped the broken goblin equipment they had collected, gaining a few more units. Still short. He turned to his 3 blackguards. Strip everything useful from inside the territory boundary. Timber, stones, anything structural we can spare. They obeyed without complaint, their enhanced strength making short work of what would have taken ordinary workers' hours. When the threshold was finally met, Lingy confirmed the upgrade without hesitation. A golden beam fell from the sky and hit the old wooden house. The building rose and expanded before his eyes, its walls threading with magical patterns, its windows widening to let in more light. When the process ended, a 2-story structure of genuine craftsmanship stood where the cabin had been. The territory itself expanded from barely 1,000 square meters to 10,000. New buildings were now unlocked, a warehouse, a residence, farmland, and new possibilities with them. Lingy immediately took out the barracks blueprint and selected a site near the forest-facing edge of the territory. Construction consumed more resources than he had. He was short again. He looked at his 165 evolution points and made a decision. The Spring of Life, still sitting at Tier 2 with 4 recruits per day, was the territory's other critical resource engine. He spent 50 points on it without deliberating. The spring stone platform erupted in green-gold light. The water began to churn, ancient runes surfacing along the rim like letters rising from deep water. When the light cleared, The new fountain radiated something more potent than it had before. Spring of Life, Level 3, Rare Quality. 8 recruits per day. Increased chance of exceptional citizens. 8 per day. He had doubled the engine. He used the day's fresh recruitment quota immediately. 8 glowing orbs landed and resolved into people. For women with cat ears and gently swishing tails. For with sun-warmed skin and lively eyes. All 8 knelt at once. Most had potential between F and E rank. Modest, but exactly what he needed for labor and basic soldiering in the early days. He assigned them to resource gathering and gave them one clear objective: build the barracks. By nightfall, the materials were in. The barracks rose from the ground with a solemnity that made even the youngest recruits stop and watch. Stone and rune and the smell of old iron. Lingy stood before the finished building and issued his first training order. 10 basic swordsmen, all options set to maximum aggression. 10 minutes. Then the doors opened. 10 women in leather armor marched out in formation, swords at their sides, young faces set with unexpected determination. They knelt in unison. Lingy looked at his army. Then he looked at Puna, standing in the torchlight with her dragon flame spear and her absolute, unshakable confidence. A bold idea began to grow. The moonlight was soft, and even across the territory when Lingy made up his mind. A 4th-tier dragon blood warrior was exceptional. What would a 5th be? He called Puna's name. She came immediately, her crimson armor gleaming, and knelt without being asked. Her golden eyes were already bright with anticipation before he had even spoken. Are you willing to undergo another evolution? The tremor that passed through her wasn't fear. It was something closer to joy. Each previous evolution had been a rebirth, a shedding of limitation. Her blood remembered it. Her soul remembered it. I am willing, she said, voice barely steady. I will give everything for my master. Lingy reached out and placed his palm against her forehead. The system immediately flagged a warning. Repeated high-intensity evolution on the same unit may trigger unknown mutations. Proceed with caution. Mutation. The word might have given him pause once. Now it only sharpened his focus. Confirm. The energy that exploded from his palm was unlike anything that had come before. A pillar of golden-red light drove straight into the sky, pushing back the moonlight. A dragon's roar, not Puna's voice, something older and deeper, thundered through the night. Every person in the territory woke. Those who had been standing stumbled. Even Launchi and Rasyu went pale, staring upward with expressions somewhere between awe and vertigo. Lingy stood at the center of it and didn't move. When the light faded, Puna floated a foot above the ground. Her crimson armor had been rebuilt by the evolution, reforged in golden flame, now a masterpiece of overlapping dragon scale plates. Behind her, a pair of enormous wings made of solid, burning energy had unfurled. Her forehead bore 2 small golden dragon horns that had grown through her skin with quiet, inevitable authority. In her hands, the dragon flame spear had become something far more significant. A massive dragon fang blade, wreathed in fire that roared without consuming. She descended slowly and knelt before him. Lingy opened her status panel and felt his heart stumble. Puna, Dragonborn War God. Rank 5. Legendary, Unique. Loyalty, 100. Devoted. Her talent had mutated from A grade to something the system barely had language for. Skills: Dragon God Blood, Passive Bloodline, Flame Breath, Dragonborn Fury, Human Dragon Form, Locked. The panel's closing note read simply, her potential is limitless. From now on, he said, reaching down to help her to her feet, you are my strongest blade. I will cut through everything that stands before you, she answered, and the golden fire in her eyes made it sound less like a promise and more like a law of physics. He looked at the rest of his followers, the ones still shakily rising from the ground, faces pale, eyes wide, and raised his voice. Stand up. From today, Puna serves as first general, commanding all combat units. Launchi manages internal affairs and logistics. Rasyu handles scouting and defense, and will form our ranged unit. The guards and swordsmen fall under Puna's command. A simple structure, a clear chain, a real army. He looked at them all. War god, moon priestess, elven archer, loyal guards, young soldiers still learning what their bodies could do, and felt something settle into place. "It's late," he said. "Rest. We have important work tomorrow." That night, after assigning rooms in the upgraded 2-story mansion, Lingy settled at his desk and opened the world chat channel. The volume of despair that flooded his screen was almost impressive in its consistency. Someone was trapped by dire wolves in the Blackstone Mountains with no troops left. Someone else had been fighting goblins all day for 0 worthwhile drops. A third person had apparently shouted, "I'm your boss," at a goblin pack on someone else's advice, and was now being chased by an enthusiastic mob of them. Then a pinned post arrived from a player named Xiao Tianlong. A screenshot of a warrior mounted on a huge black wolf with a curved blade, captioned with something about Tier 2 prairie wolf riders and how within 10 miles, this person was the king. The chat exploded with admiration and flattery. Lingy read it and looked at Puna's room, from which he could hear the steady, rhythmic breathing of someone sleeping like a banked furnace. Tier 2. The chat thought this was impressive. He shook his head and kept scrolling. Most of the chat was noise, but one message, quickly deleted, caught his eye before it vanished. Someone calling themselves Xiao Xing had found a bronze-level treasure chest near coordinates 759-1244. It was guarded by a first-tier goblin elite and several dozen ordinary goblins. The person lacked the strength to take it alone and was offering to split the loot with a capable partner. Bronze chest. Lingy's eyes sharpened. Treasure chests in this world ranked from black iron at the bottom through bronze, silver, and gold. A bronze chest could contain blueprints, equipment, or special items capable of advancing a territory by a full stage. And a goblin elite guarding it? Just more evolution points on legs. He marked the coordinates. Blackwind Forest was close, half an hour at Puna's pace. Tomorrow, use it to test the new swordsman. He was about to close the channel when a second announcement appeared, pinned in blood red. The issuer was someone named Wang Tong, writing on behalf of an organization he called the Tonglong Guild. The message declared that Blood Moon Forest and all surrounding territories now belonged to the guild. Every lord in the area had until the end of the protection window to surrender voluntarily, handing over half their resources and, pointedly, their women, in exchange for protection. Those who refused would find no survivors after the window closed. The writer mentioned an A-grade talent called Legion and a starting unit of 3rd-tier Griffin Knights, as proof that this was not an idle threat. The chat erupted. Panic, awe, resignation. Lords near Blood Moon Forest began measuring their options and finding none good. Lingy read it once, then set the channel aside. His territory fell within the radiation zone of Blood Moon Forest. That made Wang Tong an eventual problem. But not yet. And when the time came, Griffin Knights would need to fly a great deal faster than Puna could move to make a meaningful difference. He closed the screen. The night was quiet. He had plans to make and not enough points to make them with yet. Somewhere beyond the barrier, the forest waited. Before dawn, Lingy had the barracks running again. 10 more basic swordsmen trained and assembled. Another 10 minutes, another 10 young women in formation, eyes alert and eager. His combat team had grown to 26 members total, led by one legendary war god and supported by a moon priestess, an elite archer, 3 heavy guards, and 20 novice swordsmen. Any other lord who saw this force would have refused to believe it was real. The team moved out at first light, heading for Blackwind Forest. The forest was dark even at midday, the canopy so dense that sunlight barely filtered through, leaving everything beneath it in a cool, damp twilight that smelled of decay and unfamiliar things. Strange bird calls echoed from deeper in. Nobody spoke above a murmur. Puna walked to the front, her dragon-scale armor catching whatever light existed and throwing it back as warmth. The black guards moved behind her in a tight cluster around Lingy. The new swordswomen flanked the formation in 2 lines, grips tight, faces carefully neutral over barely contained nerves. Rasyu had already disappeared into the canopy 30 meters ahead. 300 meters forward, Her voice arrived from above, cool as still water. 5 goblins. Patrol pattern. Light formation. Lingy raised his hand. The column stopped, noiseless. Rasyu. Take 3. A breath passed. 3 sounds almost simultaneous. The softest possible sounds, air parting around something fast. In the distance, 3 goblins dropped where they stood. The remaining 2 stared at the bodies with a blank confusion of creatures who had not yet processed that something had ended. Before they could, the blackguard were already in motion, shields up, closing the gap at a sprint. 1 goblin met a tower shield at full momentum and went airborne. It hit 2 trees on the way down and did not get up. The other was surrounded by the swordswomen. The first brave young woman who stepped forward to strike landed her blow with a sound like an axe on greenwood. Warm green blood splattered across her face and arm. She froze for a moment, and then something unlocked behind her eyes. This is what battle feels like. She struck again. So did the others. When it was over, the body was unrecognizable, and 6 swordswomen were breathing hard and exchanging looks of slightly disbelieving exhilaration. They continued inward. By the time they reached the coordinates from Shaoxing's post, the swordswomen had shed most of their nervousness. They had tasted blood, survived the taste, and found it meant something. Their fear hadn't vanished, but it had changed shape, from something formless to something manageable. Rasyu materialized beside Lingy without a sound. Goblin camp ahead. 50 or so. Standard composition with 1 large individual in the center, likely the elite. There's a structure at the back, a wooden shed. I can sense energy fluctuations from inside. The treasure chest. Lingy looked at Puna. 1 task. Her eyes lit up. Go in. Crush the elite. She was already moving before he finished the sentence. The camp didn't know what hit it. Puna's charge hit the perimeter like a comet strike. The fence exploded inward. The dragon aura that erupted from her body knocked goblins off their feet before she'd touched a single one. The smaller ones simply collapsed under the pressure, unable to process the predator suddenly occupying their space. The goblin elite, larger than the rest, wearing a crude crown of bone and wielding a rusty cleaver, roared and tried to organize a counterattack. It raised its weapon. Puna's dragon fang blade came down first. The elite never finished the swing. With its death, the remaining goblins lost all cohesion. The swordswomen swept through them in groups of 2 and 3, clean and efficient, working from the outside in. Rashu's arrows intercepted anything that tried to run. The blackguards sealed the only exit. It was over in minutes. The bronze chest waited in the wooden shed, exactly where Rashu had sensed it. Lingy crouched, pressed his hand to the lid, and opened it. Inside, a level 1 barracks blueprint and a low-quality energy crystal. He stood up and allowed himself a brief, quiet satisfaction. A barracks blueprint. Precisely the bottleneck he had been trying to solve. He looked at Launchy. The field is clean. Let's check the cave. Back at the territory, Lingy dismantled the energy crystal for resources, and within the hour the second barracks had been placed and built. Soldiers trained. The compound was growing real teeth. But there was a problem that wouldn't resolve on its own. Resource shortages. Stone and iron ore were the binding agents of everything he wanted to build next. Arrow towers, the blacksmith shop, reinforced walls, and he didn't have enough of either to do any of it. He looked at his remaining evolution points, 71, and directed them at the spring of life, upgrading it from Tier 2 to Tier 3. 8 recruits per day. Higher chance of exceptional citizens. The new recruits arrived when the day reset. 6 in all, standard baseline, ready to work. He assigned them immediately to the resource problem. Gather, sort, carry. The barracks kept producing. The territory kept expanding. With 67 points remaining, Lingy spent 50 upgrading what he decided was his most critical bottleneck. The blacksmith shop, which transformed into a smelting workshop under the application of the talent. 2 key effects emerged: a 10% reduction in resource consumption during standard equipment crafting, and a random chance of producing excellent quality gear with enhanced attributes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the kind of advantage that compounded.